We should include feedback from communities, workers and visitors to understand what works on the ground.
Bravo! Round of applause to the Governance and Strategy Group. Right, so then here's my card. You're going to email that to me. Yes. Thank you very much. Anyone else want anything they want to add from this group? Or is it just all perfectly captured? More specific. Yeah, I think there's an interesting question about the specificities of the region. I saw there was an indicator we had around roads. And again, if you are big, remote regions, you will have a lot of roads. So maybe that's just telling us something about the region that isn't going to differentiate.
And it's also about with the existence of local public strategy for tourism and recent sustainable tourism destination certifications, is it actually followed up? Is it actually being used? Is actually the master plan for tourism, is the municipality actually executing the plan, or is it just a stamp of approval and that's it?
Yeah, and I think about how do you capture people's real lived experience is so powerful, but we've got to think about how that can be done. We had some interesting thoughts over here about using Reddit earlier, which I thought was an interesting one. It might be some kind of real-time feedback. Good. Anyone else from governance and strategy want to say anything? Bravo, governance and strategy. Now, I know the resilience is over here. Who is going to speak for resilience? Sorry, Nina, is there anything you wanted to comment on governance and strategy?
I really liked this point that you actually underlined in your comment as well, that not only about strategies if they're done and written, but how they are taken into practice and if it really happens. Then I guess it's a totally different question, that how do you find measurements on that? But taking that challenge, I think that's a very relevant point.
Excellent. Maybe we should sidle together, Nina. There we go. Here we go. We'll do a team, like Eurovision. Right. Who will speak for resilience? Excellent. Thank you very much.
I can do it. Thank you. Well, we need to ask instructions many times. Thank you. But the notes that we wrote down that all the three indicators that are under the resilience, they are correct and useful. And also the definition is clear. Yeah. And we also wrote down additional indicator suggestions from us to improve how to measure movement not only by airports but also other transportation such as cruise ships, trains and charters. And we wrote an example of Alta cruise ships. Then the second indicator suggestion from us were regarding emergency services and readiness to action in case of a large accident. And that how ready is municipality in case of a large accident, e.g. Cruise ship accident. And perhaps is it so that it could be measured by comparing places in hospitals in that municipality versus number of permanent residents in the area versus number of visitors in the area. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And you have organic feedback for me? Thank you very much. An organic piece of paper. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the group want to add anything? Oh, what a harmonious group. And Nina, I mean, I think we talked at the break about the digital sentiment score and how that may actually be problematic looking at the early results. Do you want to comment on that or anything else?
Well, yes, that's one thing I thought about earlier in Michael's presentation when you said that most of the destinations or the municipalities actually, they score lower than the national average on the digital or the social media positive mentionings, wasn't that how you defined it? I'm thinking, can it be due to the mentionings not being on the municipality name? So let's take, for example, Kittilä. A lot of people mention Levi, which is the main tourist destination there, but they might not use the name Kittilä. So therefore, how can we measure it? How can we find those sentiments maybe for the main destinations? Some municipalities might have one, some have several, some might have shared ones. In some it might be several municipalities kind of like working together for a joint destination. But otherwise than that, I think probably we also earlier as the team commented about the other than the air transportation, the other modes of transportation as well, just like this group. So very good point. And also the emergency services, that's a really important topic, that what if something happens here? And it doesn't even have to be as big as a cruise ship. In a lot of small places, it's enough with a coach. With 50 people injured, how do you even handle that? Or a plane, never less to talk about a big cruise ship. So definitely about resilience there. And then something I've been thinking about as well is the economic diversification. In a way, yes, it's good not to put all the eggs in one basket, but what does it mean that we get a low score if there is a very strong tourism industry in some destination? And is it necessarily a bad thing? So something to think about in the work forward.
That's a good question, and it depends on the point of view. Because, for example, in Interreg we have put a lots of effort for the last 4 years how to put something else for strongholds besides of tourism. Because at the point of view of local inhabitants who is not necessarily working or benefiting from tourism, it is an important thing that there's enough diversity.
Yeah, for sure. That's why it's good to consider.
Well, if it's your favourite topic.
The diversity in tourism industry, because in tourism industry, because this is a kind of a business of micro and small businesses, so it's diverse by definition. It's mainly just small companies, so the risk and it's very diverse. If you compare it to a big factory with 100 persons, then we're talking about at least 20 tourist companies, so it's already diverse, the tourist business. Yeah, but tourism is itself it's diverse. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but looking from the municipality point of view, that is the area of resilience. If it's focusing only in tourism industry, like 50, 60, 70%, it's not resilience.
No. Yeah, so interesting from the perspective of the businesses or the perspective of the municipality.
If you have forest industry, then you're relying on one soil. Yeah, that's
And I'm alone in this job. I get to steal other people's good ideas. And I know this group was talking earlier about seasonality. And I wondered if obviously we can't get every indicator across the different seasons. But in terms of resilience, does there need to be an indicator around seasonality? Because volatility, I would presume, of income or employment opportunities is a risk in itself, or is a weakness. And what you're looking to do is to try and smooth out some of those differences across seasons. And that might be an indicator of a positive progression in the industry. Just a thought. Okay, great. Look, you've got us going. Right, who is next? Infrastructure and services. Who is infrastructure and services? Bravo.
Yeah, we are happy with your work on the rationale of this, so we have nothing to add there. But in the indicator list, we wanted to add something. So there was an indicator about connectivity from the... Oh, sorry. So in the connectivity from the nearest airport, we also think that connectivity is much more than airports. It's also public transportation, railroads, and all kinds of ways to arrive to the destination. And it's also the same of kilometers of local roads per capita. It's much more about the connectivity of the roads than the amount of kilometers. So where are those roads connecting you? We also think that it could be interesting to know for like a broad audience to know how many ski tracks are there in kilometers, how many snowmobile tracks are there in kilometers, how many hiking tracks are there in kilometers. Things like this is also very interesting for a traveler's point of view. We have the same point in healthcare. It's not just about inhabitants, but it's also about the amount of visitors. Is there enough capacity to handle a large accident with a bus, for example? So things like that is important. Yeah, public toilets. Good. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you very much. Precious scrap of paper. Thank you very much. That is great feedback. Really appreciated. Group, anyone want to add anything?
I just want to elaborate a little bit on the public toilet. It's basically to figure out how many there are in per kilometer roads per capita. That's interesting. I think we also didn't we have something else? I feel like something was forgotten. Yeah. Okay. I think that was all then. Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, you got one more? No. That's great. Nina, any reflections?
I think there was very good reflections from the group once again. What I started thinking actually when we were saying infrastructure services, very good point with the different activity routes, hiking, biking, whatnot. But could it be also other services, like, let's say, restaurants, grocery, whatever, taxis?
He was thinking about the public responsibility, what's coming from like the municipality and the official responsibilities.
Yeah.
So I think the other outbid is more organic. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we was thinking about dividing the responsibility to the the local businesses and the government responsibility. So shops and restaurants, it's like an organic growth that maybe will come with the number of guests visiting.
Maybe they could both be measured. I'm thinking, for example, what the mayor said in the morning, that if they would not have the visitors here that much, the locals wouldn't have that many restaurants to be able to visit. So if it's the same size city without the visitors, also the private service structure would look different. So that would be one way of digging into what is the actual due to tourism result, not only due to society as a whole. I think Johanna was first, and then Mats.
Me, as being one of the people behind this, have a stupid question that I probably should know, but I don't. When we talk about connectivity from the nearest airport, are we always talking about the airport in your own country? Because we have a lot of companies and places, especially close to the Finnish border, that actually brings the guests to the Finnish airports. So that is their nearest airport, not the one in Luleå, for example. Do we take that into consideration, or do we just go on the national level? I don't know. But perhaps you do, Michael. Hopefully.
No, but it's a great question. And thank you, we've got that down. Now, who was it over here? Okay.
Just a reflection or observation regarding the how we can compare this between different countries, because I have a history in Finland, now working in Norway, and I've been small, smiling inwards to myself, this big discussion in Norway regarding the public toilets, which is a big issue here in Norway, that we have enough toilets for our guests. I never faced this discussion in Finland, very seldom, and it's due to other things which are compared to gas stations and other service points. The things that Maria brought up, that the infrastructure is so different between the countries, the number of restaurants compared to inhabitants, and if we don't take those in consideration, we lose it's under those, and because we need the whole infrastructure to understand it. And if you only think, for instance, the toilets, it doesn't tell us a lot. Because I assume that there is much less public toilets in Finnish Lapland than in northern Finland, but even though it's not the major problem in northern Finland, the lack of public toilets. Please correct me, Finns, if I'm wrong.
Well, I would say it's not discussed that much, but in a way it would be good to have those public toilets along the roads as well. But maybe it's a question also of guest behavior, that is there as much of the drive around on the roads and enjoying the scenery and the nature around it by that. But yes, that's a good point, highlighting how the destinations and the areas are different, and therefore the measurements might be a little bit different as well.
Was it General Patton who said no plan survives first contact with the enemy? And this is exactly the point. This is where you can design whatever indicators you like, but when you engage with reality, suddenly this feedback is so valuable. I mean, exactly this point about the airports, is you can't just base it on the country. You've got to think about people moving across borders. These things mean different things in different countries. So this is fantastic. Some thoughts on this one. I mean, I think personally, I would say the restaurants, if you could measure it, should be in. I think we shouldn't just be thinking in a public service delivery thing. If we think about the benefits of tourism, you've got to capture the impacts of tourism on the community, which I think includes, if possible, restaurants, stores, gas stations, electric charging points. I mean, maybe access to gas stations or electric car recharging points might be better than kilometres of road or something. We've got to think about that. And then also this thing about, I noticed on the other data how these municipalities have tended to do better than the national average on professionals in healthcare. Is that something to do with the demographics, or is it because there's capacity already built in here because of the surge population from tourists? So I think we need to take into account of that. So more questions than answers, but this is good. This is what we want. Right. Who's got the economy? Who's got the economy? The economy. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay. We got the best part. So I think we agreed that the measurements here was good, but we have some inputs as well, quite a few inputs. I'll start here. I'll pick up a few. We discussed that maybe it would be good to have an indicating, also showing the amount of people in a business. So if we're saying like one person can be an unstable business, because if that person, it happens something to that person, then the business won't continue. Maybe 5 people would be a more stable business, perhaps have a scale on that. All the measurements to be connected to the industry, so the tourism industry. We talked about the unemployment rate, but we also discussed maybe having a measurement of young people getting into their first job, so into employment. How many people are working in the area actually paying taxes in the area? Because we have a lot of seasonal workers as well in the tourism industry. And then we need a graph there, but I won't take that one. Yes, and we also talked about that the tourism industry is often a way of people coming into the area, start working in the tourism industry, then moving on to other industries, buying houses, and so the tourism industry is like a drive-in port. How can we compare to other industries? We need more local data. What is the real effect of tourism Yes, and this one was also, how can we assure the statistic is comparable in the regions and the countries? And then we discussed the guest night accommodation. How are they measured in Norway, in Finland and Sweden? And are they actually comparable to each other? And how do we measure, and this was one thing that's been launched in Sweden, measure the impact on tourism from card companies. So the card companies are now measuring the spending on the different cards in Sweden. Like if you buy something in Kirkenes, is the card from south of Sweden or from England? And I think this was launched last week. A month ago, okay, a month ago. And that might be something we can move into other countries as well. Okay, yeah. Was that it? And I hope you can read that.
That's great. Thank you very, very much. Economy Group, anyone want to add anything? Stunned silence or perfect harmony amongst the group. Excellent. We love that. This is a good point again. Also, you're not building a tool like this once and forever. It can actually be built on, improved over time. And I do know, I think MasterCard in particular, I'm not doing a plug here, they're doing a lot of work around publishing more data for social good. So it may be that there's spend data that could be incorporated into this. And this point about size of enterprises, I think, is very important as well. There was an initiative a few years ago to produce something called the Global Entrepreneurship Index, and it came up with poor countries as being the most entrepreneurial. But of course, what that was telling us was that people with no job tended to try and do anything to earn a bit of money. So it wasn't actually telling you how entrepreneurial those countries were into genuinely in creating businesses. It was actually a measure of how desperate people were. So I think thinking about what you're measuring, what it really tells you is important. And I think thinking about what kind of size of business we're measuring. And then we also talked about that differences between different measures across countries as well. Any feedback from you, Nina?
Well, first of all, wonderful work. A lot of good points there from this group as well. One point I would like to add as a measurement here, I think I mentioned it earlier, is the effect on taxes. How much taxes are paid due to tourism in so many different ways. There are many different taxes, direct or indirect and all of that, but they all contribute very clearly to the local society and the national level as well. And we know actually there are discussions about tourism taxes in many places going on. That would be also one way to show what kind of taxes are already paid due to tourism.
I do wonder where you got. Go on then.
There seems to be also a difference in the three different countries, which companies, which businesses are rated as tourism in the tourist business, and that makes big differences because in Finland there is a certain percentage, for instance, of the grocery shops and the gas station which are a part of the tourist business, and in Norway it's just specific companies according to how they grade it into the official registrations.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just going to have to be wrestled with this project, which I think is ultimately for you to answer, is how much do you want comparability and how much do you want granularity? Because if you want it to be as comparable as possible across countries, it may have to be simpler than if it's very granular. And it may be what you have to do is have a base, the base of the pizza that's the same, and then you can add different data for different countries if you want to. That's an option, but there's a trade-off there. Right, well-being. We finish on well-being. What a nice, harmonious way to end. Right.
Yes, hi. So we didn't actually discuss so much that's the rationale for this dimension. If the rationale for the dimension reflected what we thought, we accepted it as it is. And I'm guessing we accepted it. And then we started talking about but we were not completely convinced about the indicators and talking about which ones we could add, because these ones are all okay, are good. Well, I'll talk about the reported offenses we were actually curious. We talked about if we could measure seasonality, because we were curious whether the offenses go up or down during the high season and the low season. There was some talk about cross-country things, but I'm not going to get involved in that one. And then, so this talks about, public safety, social inclusion, healthcare, community well-being. So we had a few of those mentioned here. So we thought of Airbnb, that it would be good to measure beds per capita, with the importance of how many apartments are lost to short-term rental and how many from the apartments that are available for people living in the community. Not necessarily from the economic point of view, but from the society point of view. Then another one was to measure disability, which we said to measure how many people are on long or permanent term sick leave. Connecting it with if a society is more inclusive and accessible, both people would maybe not need to be on sick leave because they could go to work if the bus takes them to work, but also maybe companies become more accessible, so then they can have a person that is on sick leave because of a disease or a disability, that maybe they can go to work in a certain place if it becomes more accessible. Yes, but so this one actually we were not sure what to put the title on, but it was about connecting with the local communities, but also the original people living in the communities, and we're talking about Sami language and other, what do we say, native languages. How possible it is to study in another native language that is not Norwegian, Swedish, and Finnish in a community, which would mean that the cultural values of that community, of that, I don't know what to call it. I'm going to use the Sami as an example. You guys understand I'm talking in general, not only about the Sami, but if there's a kindergarten that speaks Sami, then the Sami language is being conserved, and then the Sami culture is being conserved. And that would also be something of the well-being of the community, of the people there. And also about long-term employment, in the sense of the wellness of the community, was how many available spots are in kindergartens and primary schools in order to accept seasonal workers that might want to stay also in the long term, because if a family comes with small kids, they won't come if they kind of put them on kindergarten. And if they have place in kindergarten, then maybe they can stay, and that would be a more sustainable way of employment. I think that's it. And we have the note for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. A couple of thoughts there. I mean, one is, thank you, across different, not just this area and others, something around the surge capacity seems to be important, both in terms of workers but also tourists. There's something about how well do you deal with the surge of incomers for schools or hospitals or crime or whatever. There's something about that seems to be important to be captured. I mean, on the housing one, beds, etc., I mean, it feels like there's a question around affordability of housing, and is that stable over time, is the real issue for locals. And thirdly, it doesn't just have to be about indigenous people. There's something about cultural preservation that is actually not about a negative, but it can also be about a positive. I'm not sure how you would measure that, but I think one thing we would say is that tourism industry that brings in the local people in a whole bunch of ways, not just language, but craft and trades, is going to be around cultural preservation, and that's a benefit that should be captured. Not sure how you do that. The rest of the group, anything you want to add on well-being?
I think it's also important to measure how, for instance, how long you have to wait to get the doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, how far you have to travel to get to hospital, those kind of things.
Yes, if that's, I mean, that data would be wonderful if you could get it. Of course, then we go back to the problem of comparison between countries and if there's different data sets on that, especially if you're looking about people with a disability, you know, changes in policy can lead to big changes in those numbers, and there can be big difference between countries, but we can think about that. Nina, thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking there was a lot of good measures from the group and also here already. I think on the well-being part especially, it's quite difficult to kind of break out that what is due to tourism. So let's say life expectancy at birth. How much of that is due to tourism, strong or not in the area, and how much is due to something else? So that is something that we kind of need to consider, that which measurements are the right ones for this tool measuring effects of tourism.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to say, I'm just checking my phone to say thank you, Gabriella, for sending in the notes from the first group. So I have 5 sets of notes, so that's mission accomplished. Great feedback. Thank you all very much. Before we finish, I think we should finish strictly on time in 1 minute. So all I want to say is thank you very much. If anyone's got a brilliant idea for what to call this tool, it's still a tool with no name, so do tell us.
I would love to know the movie you referred to.
Well, it's the Dollars trilogy, Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. All right, send you the link. Right, Alexia, over to you.
And I could actually use the opportunity in between here to thank Michael. Thank you for this afternoon, and thank you everybody for very, very active participation in that. And then over to you, Alexia.